Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to Star Trek New Worlds. My name is Tony, and if you are brand new here, never been with us before, thank you for joining us live. If you're catching us on the replay, then thanks for taking the time. You're probably wondering, if you're new, what is this Star Trek New Worlds thing? Well, we are a turn-based strategy game that we play online here, showing live with you on YouTube. Not Facebook Live today, but sometimes Facebook Live, and of course, Twitch. We play this game using the rule set of Federation and Empire as published by the Amarillo Design Bureau, and the map we are going to show you is brought to you by the magic of Vassal. So thank you, everybody, for joining us here on today's episode. What are we going to be talking about? Well, as per the description, we'll be talking about the top three things that you need to know to be able to succeed in real estate, Star Trek New Worlds edition. Also, alliances all the way around, but who's left out? And what comes next? With peace in our time, what does the future of New Worlds look like? And of course, the turn 79 reveal. But before we get started, let's slide into the chat and see who's there. I can see chat. What is going on? Right. There's the live chat. Here we go. Settings are a wonderful thing. Ladies and gentlemen, Eugene being the first on the spot, as always, our public affairs officer and or press agent right here saying, this week's wait is nearly over. What will we learn this week? Will the Juggy Expeditionary Group begin to bring the fight to the Juggies? Will the Four Powers Alliance join the Juggy fight? Eugene Bland also says, will the wormholes leading to the splintered nations be used to colonize those new nations, bringing peace and justice to those new frontiers? Will the Banshees eat those homeworlds and claim it? Will the Banshees be a match for the Juggies, or will the Four Powers use the wormholes to Tholian space and do the Juggies bidding to bring down the Tholians? I don't know. We'll have to see what the world brings us. We've also got Bill Smith is in the house. Captain Adam, East Side versus West Side. Gorn's gonna travel. Hey, Eugene, how's it going? Paul Williams is in the house, and I know somewhere out there is a GM. There he is, Daniel, pew pew, in the house. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here live. Let's get into the nitty-gritty. We're going to start off with our wonderful galactic news. We'll slide right into our top three things to think about when it comes to real estate in Star Trek New Worlds, and then we will go around the clock summarizing and highlighting what's going on in turn 79. But without further ado, let's slide into the galactic news. Banshee Bonanza. Reports are trickling in about a swarm of Banshees descending on the Lyran Commonwealth homeworld. The remnants of the Lyran home fleet took to combat once again and dispatched the mechanical menaces with martial might. Meanwhile, in Reman space, another swarm was engaged by the Reman Navy. The now famous Monster Squad fleet was forced to retreat with heavy losses. Where are all these Banshees coming from? Are they another tool in the Juggernaut playbook? Dun dun dun. Peace dividends. All across the eastern half of the galaxy, navies are standing down from a war footing. Obsolete and damaged ships are being decommissioned and given over to scrapyards at a record pace. Will these swords be beaten into plowshares or merely melted down to make more machines for militaristic mayhem? Land grab. With the collapse of the Federation and Lyran empires, a great deal of territory has fallen into darkness and obscurity yet again. Already, empires from around the galaxy are making moves on the many wormholes that permeate the area. Will this prove to be an opportunity for cooperative development by the galactic governments, or is it going to be a new flashpoint that will plunge us all into war again? Only time will tell. Juggernaut Jaunt. The Juggernaut raiding fleet has engaged the Tholian 3rd Fleet at Sector Sierra 27 and driven off the Stony Defenders. Damage reports indicate that the base at this sector was destroyed, with all hands lost. What do these mysterious invaders want? Is there madness to their method? And that will be the Galactic News. All right, welcome back. So a little light on our news this week, but that's what happens when we go from the chaos and dynamic back and forth of war to the super calm serenity of peace. Will there be peace in our time? Well, we're in it now. So let's talk about what's going on the map and what we're going to do about that. So let's slide right in to the fleet cap and EP summary right now. All right, welcome to the map. This is turn 79. We'll do the fleet cap and EP summaries, then roll into our real estate, and then we'll go around the clock and figure out who's who in the zoo and what is going on out there. Let's start off with the Carnivon at a 35.5 EP. The Federation is at 37.5. Now, that's really the collection of all the minor factions that are all together there, but that gives you a sense of kind of the total economic impact that the remnants of the Federation can have. The Gorn, by consequence, are at a whopping 50. Whoa, 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 whoa. Ladies and gentlemen, a coffee has been fired. Disruptors away. Thank you very much. Caffeine is the elixir of life. And truly, I do appreciate all that support. That goal was fired by the Juggernauts. Ooh, yeah. I mean, I don't want to say that I'm an agent pushing the story of the AI fiends at the center of the universe, but they do keep me well caffeinated. So thank you very much to those Juggernaut, mysterious, mechanical mayhem causing mischievants out there. Thank you very much for your caffeine support. I'll take one more swig. And let's dive back into the EP and fleet cap summary. All right, so the Gorns, as we were saying, are at a 56 EP, putting them ever so closer to the sweet 60 mark. We'll talk about some key things that happen in Gorn space to get them to 56. The ISC are at 44.5. The Klingon Empire is at 68.5. They are ever so creeping towards the elusive 70 mark. The Lyrans, again, this is the collection of all the Lyran remnants, is at 34 EP, which, as you can see, is kind of around the Federation collective strength, making them sort of an interesting and easy target to be able to engage. The Riemann Empire is at 61.5. Interesting. 61.5. The Romulans at 48.5. Ooh, what's going on there? I, for some reason, thought that the Romulans were already popping 50, but 48.5 for the Romulans is a very strange number. We'll have to go check out what's going on in the Romulan economy. And the Tholians, rounding us out, are at 61 flat. So interesting to note the sort of the layers here. You've got folks like the Carnivon who are at, after obviously suffering a war, they're at 35.5. You've got, and that sort of ties in with the other sort of empires that were that suffered some catastrophic setbacks, Federation Lyran by example. You've got the Gorn surging to 56, the Romulans struggling at 48.5, the Remans and Tholians really hovering at that 61 mark, and of course you've got sort of filling in the middle there, you've got the ISC at 44.5. It's interesting to see sort of the spread at this point, but certainly quite the spectrum between the high 60s to the high or mid 70s, or mid 30s. Very interesting to see that kind of spread. All right, let's talk about fleet cap. Still, the Carnivon are our big, bad fleet. They have 113 total ships in the fleet with 278 attack and 453 defense. The remnants of the Federation have 56 ships floating out there around and about. The Gorn have 76 total ships in service with 170 attack factor, 317 defense. They're really starting to grow their offensive firepower. Interesting to watch. The ISC are at 110, so 110 at 360 attack factors and 517 defense. Interesting to note how close the Carnivon and the ISC are with their total ship count. The Klingons now have cracked the 100 mark with 101 ships in service, with a total attack factor of 327 and defense of 396. The Lyrans, the remnants of the Lyran Empire, have 75 ships floating out there, so certainly some speed bumps to be encountered. The Remans, by example, still the top of the stack at 146 total ships in service, 406. Wow, 406 attack factor, 530 defense. It'll be interesting to see sort of how they decide to move forward with that massive fleet. The Romulans have 78 total ships, 78 ships with a 219 attack, 351 defense. And rounding us out, the Tholians are now the fourth faction to pop 100 total ships with 103. Their total attack factor is 147, defense of 381. Interesting to note, those three factions that are over 100 ships, you've got the Klingons at 101, the Tholians at 103, the ISC at 110, and the Carnarvon at 113. So really, really, I mean, close to 10 points or 10 ships, proximity there. And interesting to sort of look at the various degrees of attack factor, 278 versus the ISC's 360. 327 for almost 330 for the Klingons, and the Tholians way below that with 147. That just speaks to the kinds of ships that they're deploying and sort of we'll call it like the state of their technology. Very, very interesting. But without further ado, let's roll into the three reasons or the three things to think about when we're talking about how to succeed in real estate in Star Trek New Worlds. All right, let's start it off with number one. Number one is the most important reason, really, the most important thing you should be thinking about, and that is location, location, location. And what do I mean by that? I mean, where are you on the map, and where is your potential land that you're trying to grab, take hold of, or control? Where is it situated relative to everybody else? Are you in a top corner, kind of isolated? Are you more in the center of the map? What does this particular plot of land that you're looking for give you access to or deny you access to? Like I mentioned before, are you sheltered away in a sort of a nook and a cranny when it comes to the map in total, or are you at the nexus point where you can reach out and touch everybody? This particular piece of or thing to think about when it comes to location is really important depending on where you're at in your game. In the early era of the game, your location and sort of where you position, where you think you are relative to your neighbors is important because it allows you to be able to move out and explore in various different directions. It gives you that idea, that preconceived expectation about where you might be able to explore and or bump into those potential neighbors. At this point in the game, in sort of the what I'll call the midpoint of the game, we have an interesting set of affairs. All the various factions are quite established in their location, but due to the nature of the conflicts in question, we've seen a shift in the area of control that various factions have. Obviously, with the collapse of the Federation and the Lyrans, they have pepper-potted, so to speak, scattered them, these little pockets across the northwestern part of the galaxy. And if you are, as we were talking about in the galactic news, we're talking about the land grab that may be going on. If you're looking to go out there, what does that give you as an advantage when it comes to access? Like, what does it give you access to, and who gets access to you as a result of being in that spot? Something to think about when it comes to, again, location, location, location. Number two on our list is good neighbors and neighborhoods. So one thing that's interesting to think about when you think about the shape and the borders of your faction is who your neighbors are. This has been a particular point for the Klingons, as in the earlier part of the game when we were tussling with the Romulans, our neighbors, the Carnarvons, decided to sneak in and backdoor us with a quick and sneaky attack. That could have gone a lot worse had the Carnarvons pursued it in any particular way, but nonetheless, at the time, they took a fairly significant amount of EP away from us and denied us access to a potential planet. That was that was a consequence of having neighbors that weren't necessarily as friendly as we would like them to be. Similarly, on the flip side, the Carnivons suffered the exact same thing when the Klingons attacked them in the 1, 2, 3 steps to success. You can check out that tutorial in our playlist below if you haven't already. But the 3 steps to success when it comes to attacking your enemy, when the Klingons attacked them and devastated portions of their empire. And so when you think about the neighbors that you have and where that's going to lead you further down the line when it comes to war and conflict and what kind of risks or threats you as a faction are being exposed to, neighbors in a good neighborhood are important to consider. One other thing to think about in this context is how you make good neighbors, mend those fences, and create good relationships. We'll say neighborhood associations, maybe, that look out for each other. And this is what's happened recently in the game with the various alliances that have been formed. But we'll talk about those in just a moment. So last thing, number 3 on our list, is room to stretch. And what do I mean by that? I mean, and granted, that is a rather provocative statement. Breathing room, I believe, is the term that Nazi Germany used when they were expanding in a very sort of aggressive way prior to the official start of World War II. But nonetheless, you as a faction and empire in this game are looking for ways to be able to grow your area of control, influence, and of course, economic resources. So whenever you think of a place that you're going to be and the positioning that you have, again, location, 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 where do you have room to expand, stretch, and explore? When it comes to the scattered remnants of what's going on in the northwest of our particular map, you can see that many of those factions, the pockets of Federation and Lyran, the remnants of the Federation and Lyran Empire are currently pocketed away, and they have the opportunity for anyone who's going to go in there to be able to secure little pockets of resources and space. But between those pockets, there's room to explore. The fog of war has been reintroduced. Those navigational buoys were destroyed. So you have room to explore and expand. And one of the interesting features of our balkanization rule is that those fog of war hexes have now sort of refreshed their ability to be able to explore and find new resources, planets, and so on. So we'll have to see how that goes forward and how various factions, as they move into those areas, explore and find, and what do they find when it comes to the various kind of opportunities that may exist in that area. So as a quick recap, let's talk about the location, 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 which is all about where you are on the map and who's around you. And of course, when we're talking about who's around you, that's rule number 2 when it comes to your neighbors. Do you have good neighbors or maybe not so friendly neighbors? Are you working with your neighbors, i.e. alliances, or is there something else going on there? And of course, the third rule, and probably the thing that leads to the most conflict, is that room to stretch, explore, or otherwise expand your empire. Do you have it? And if you don't, what are you going to do about that? Is that going to force a push point between various factions? And are you going to have a showdown, so to speak? Something to think about when we're looking at real estate in Star Trek New Worlds. But what do you think? What do you think of this interesting thought experiment when it comes to all the things in Star Trek New Worlds? Do you think those 3 particular points are valid here in this campaign, or do you have something else that you are thinking about? Are you thinking about another way that, or another sort of priority that should be thought about when we're doing the land grab, as we talked about in the Galactic News? What should we be thinking about when we're reaching out and trying to cement our location, our occupation, our positioning across the map? You let me know if those 1, 2, 3 rules of real estate in Star Trek New Worlds apply to the way you think, or do you think there's something else I'm missing? Either way, put that in the comments below or throw it in the chat, and we'll see what happens. But with that said, let's slide right back into the map. All right, here we go. Let's rock and roll. So as we were talking about before, we've got this interesting scenario that's happening up in the top left corner of the map. The Northwest is ripe for exploration and conquest, you might say, as we look and see the remnants of the Lyran Empire are scattered. So we talked about the Red Claw, I think the Red Roost Regency is what they're called. Excuse me. And they are a little pocket here. There's also a slightly smaller pocket here. I'll have to take away the ships here for a moment. And the bases, because I can't see what it says. Lazard's Industries. That is the name of that particular location. Very, very interesting. What we've got here is just little pockets of Lyran resources. Basically, we've got a developing planet here, so 2 EP plus the 4 surrounding it in resources makes it a juicy little 6 EP bump that the Remans can reach out and touch. And of course, the Red Rus Regency is a developing planet with 2 other resources, giving it a total of 4 potential EP. So really, that little pocket there is a pocket of 10 EP for the taking, should the Remans decide to reach out. As we go across here, we can see the Lyran Commonwealth, the ones that just fought off the Banshees that so scared our Lyran player that that the Commonwealth was able to fight them off. Let's take a look at what the Lyran home fleet. Oh my goodness, what do we got here? We got a heavy dreadnought, 3 command cruisers, 3 cruisers, a CL, 2 DDs, and an FF. And then what do they have crippled? They have 3 YCLs, 4 YDDs. So a couple of light cruisers, 3 light cruisers, 4 destroyers, all crippled. But really, lots of firepower left, lots of powder that's dry should they need it. Very interesting. Let's take a look at the Lyran home system just to see if there was any damage to any of the bases. And nope, we can see here the bases, at least the YDK, is fully intact and fully operational. So, no harm, no foul when it came to the Lyrans taking on those Banshees. Really, they have more bark than they have bite. As we scroll down, we can see also the Far Stars, the Aran Emergence, which is the Far Stars fleet sitting on top of a colony. Let's take a look at what they have. Far Stars, let's see here. So the Far Stars fleet, a couple of cripples you can see. They got 3 crippled destroyers, a crippled CC, CA, and CL. But other than that, they've got a CC, CA, CL, 3 DDs, and an FF just sitting there guarding the planet. They do, it seems, have a base, so they can slowly but surely repair some of those ships. But look who's popped through. We have the Gorn and 5th Fleet deciding to say hello. Gorn and 5th Fleet, not necessarily enough to be able to sort of move the needle when it comes to Far Stars, but a CC, CL, DD, and 3 FFs. They will certainly be able to stir the pot, perhaps. But if the Gorn are going to build a base there and provide themselves the opportunity to engage, retreat, then there may be a war of attrition that may be fought there, and I would expect the Gorn to come out on top. Of course, let's not just think about the Lyrans. There's also the Federation in that area. We've got the Cobalt Alliance with New Fleet, and the Federation had quite the collection of ships. So I imagine New Fleet is, let's see here, New Fed Fleet, CC, CA, DD, 2 FFs, and Theater Transport here. Wells Fargo, very nice. So nothing too much, nothing too crazy anyway when it comes to the Federation. However, they do have a colony here and a resource down here where the tug is. So if the Gorn were so inclined and could explore Victor 14 or Victor 15, they could sneak around and get in on the Cobalt Alliance, which would be interesting. Looking at the Kzinti hegemony here, which is the former Kzinti planet that the Federation was able to conquer, they, I think, have a little bit more punch. They have a YDK sitting there, and if we look at the Federation 10th Fleet, a little bit more bite to their bark. We can see they have a YCC, 3 CAs, a DD, and a total of 6 frigates in reserve. They've got also a tug and a couple prime teams here, along with that YDK and 2 planetary ground bases. Gives them quite the beefy ability to be able to resist any potential Tholian incursion. But we can see that the Tholians are upgrading a YBS to a YDK, which I'm going to go out on a limb and say is a prelude, an investment, shall we say, towards eventually moving into this particular area. So very interesting to be able to see that going on. Lastly, we've got the combination of the Sol Confederacy with the little, that's the tug named Newton, We've also got, let's take away the ships real quick here. We've got, and the bases, we've got Hunter's Pride and New Kennel and Savannah. So 2 colonies and a minor planet here over in the corner. You can see you've got 1, 2, 3, so 5, 6, 7, 8 total EP accessible here. And then in the capital system, the Sol Confederacy, you've got a couple resources, a colony, so that's 4, 2 for the developing planet, so that's a total of 6. And then, of course, the Federation capital system is a major planet and 2 minor planets. So that's 6 plus 5, 5 being that as another player who would take control of that wouldn't get the total 10 of another capital planet. They would only get it as a major planet. So 5 plus 3 plus 3 puts you at 11 potential EP just in the capital system. So 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 total EP in this little pocket once everything is up and running. So the Federation really does present itself as an opportunity depending on who wants to take advantage of it. So very interesting to see. As we scroll into the world of Big Red, what's going on? Well, as we heard in the galactic news, we have Raider 1, which is the Juggernaut fleet. Let's take a look to see if any damage was done to the Raider fleet. Oh, no, they went unscathed. We've got still 3 total frigates, 3 total destroyers, a CL and a CA roaming around freely. Tholian space. What do we got in the neighborhood? 2nd and 3rd fleet from the Tholians are attempting to put a stop to this ruckus. You can see 2nd fleet, which is sitting there on the Whiskey Wormhole, has just 2 cruisers, a DD, and 3 patrol craft. Collectively, not much punch there. And of course, we have the Tholian 3rd fleet, which if we pull that up as well, slide that over, a little bit more robust. We've got a total of 3 cruisers, so plus the 2 gives us a total of 5. We've got a total of, 7 DDs and 6, 9, oh my goodness, 13 patrol craft. So certainly the Tholians are ramping up their military effort to try and push the Raiders out. What's very interesting, I think, is that the Raiders, even still, are going to dramatically overpower the Tholians. The Tholians might be high on defense factors, but their offensive firepower just won't hit the threshold in any particular battle round to really do a lot of damage. They're going to lose a lot of ships in the effort to try and get the Raiders out, but we will have to see how that all sort of works its way out. As you can see, there is still an effort to explore towards the center. The Tholians are continuing to push, avoiding what we know reasonably can assume is another bat station right here, this stabilized size class 3. And I fully expect to see something if they push past here into the Y column. I fully expect to see a base in the Zulu column somewhere. I'm expecting Zulu 29 and Zulu 26 to have something. And we'll have to see what that looks like, whether it's a beefed up bats, i.e. maybe a starbase. But we'll have to see, because as we get closer to Charlie 28, which is the estimated center of the Juggernaut effort, yeah, they've got to have a layered defense, I would think. And so what's that going to look like? We'll have to see. We will have to see. But other than that, we can see that we've got this derelict still floating around off to the side. Home fleet, which was the fleet that the Tholians used to take Aphoria, or Alphoria here. So Tholian home fleet, let's take a look. Oh, goodness, look at all that. Goodness gracious. So a lot of cruisers still in effect, but lots of damaged and crippled units. They'll slowly repair those as they go forward or as they work their way back. But as you can see, there's still a lot of work to be done. The Tholians do have 101 ships in their, or 103 ships, excuse me, in their service. But as you can see, there's not a lot of coverage, shall we say. Bases, a very strong base network, but not a lot of coverage when it comes to ships. To be fair, that's not unique to the Tholians. There's more than one faction that has that going on. But Big Red over here on the left is certainly dealing with a lot. They've got the Juggernauts in-house. They've got the potential options up north. And let's talk about their newest ally, the Gorn. We'll talk about the Gorn and then slide into the chat just to get a little check-in to see what's going on with all of you. But let's talk about the Gorn real quick. Let's take away the ships. It can get a little busy here, and let's just recap what we got. You can see there is a collection of resources along the western edge, and then this column, shall we say, a shaft of resources projecting in an upwardly direction. I'm sure there's many ways we could go with that, but nonetheless, we can see that there is a energetic thrust towards the center and a number of resources along that path. One particular note is glory down here is, as opposed to being a hub of scub and villainy, it is now part of the Gorn hegemony. So the Gorn have diplomatically brought them on board, and that is a full 4 EP addition to their economy, which is why they are now at at 56 EP, over the mid-mark in the 50s. So very, very interesting. All right, let's bring back the ships and see what is going on here. So we can see not too much to talk about necessarily when it comes to where all their stuff is. Interesting to note that the fleet that used to be sitting here on the Victor wormhole and starbase, YDK I should say, has moved. So mobile fleet, let's take a look at mobile fleet. Gorn. Mobile fleet. So this is the W era fleet that was previously sitting on that wormhole. They're moving to the west, and I want to say they're probably getting ready to be able to go through this AA wormhole. I want to say that AA wormhole, we know where it goes. I'll just have to double check as we look at the rest of the map. So interesting to note. And of course, as we move upward and onward, we've got the Gorn really pushing the exploration up towards the Juggernauts, and we've got a combination, look at that, 2 different Orion bases where the Tholians are exploring with their cruisers and prime team combo. We can see, interesting, yeah, the collaboration maybe happening between the Tholians and the Gorn is interesting. So very interesting to note. We've got the Quebec wormhole here, which of course goes to the other side of the galaxy. Let's just take a quick look over there and see what's going on. We can see, let me move my head. Obviously, it's in the way. Stand by. Sliding over. You can see that the Gorn have established a new border along this little area here, and they've established a pocket of control. So 2 resources plus the Quebec wormhole and a base on it. So they've got themselves a little foothold here if they want to move that in any particular direction. So very interesting to see. But with that said, let's take a moment and slide back into the chat and check in on what you are up to. All right. So let's slide into the chat and see what everybody is saying, because boy, it seems like the chitter chatter is picking up. Oh, sliding up. Oh my goodness, look at all that chitter chat. So we're going to pick it up from when the disruptor fire was sent and the coffee was picked up. Thank you so much. All right, so Dell is in the house. War, he says. I miss it. Can we have some more? John 10 Broke says, hello, everyone. Welcome, John. And, of course, Will Culberson is in the house. Everyone is saying hello and welcome. Eugene, war, huh? What is it good for? It seems galactic press employment and ink. So true. So true. Dell, I feel it in my fingers. I feel it in my toes. Riemann space is all around me. And so the occupation grows. Well, looks like military law is the rule of the roost when it comes to the Riemann Empire. But, you wouldn't expect too much different from space vampires. What do you know? John Tenbrook says, hey, Tony, forgive my ignorance. I'm not in the Discord channel. But why exactly did the Lyrans and the Federation players resign? They were in a decent strategic position. So, question mark. Well, I will say that is a bit of a touchy subject. But suffice it to say, we talked about it a little bit in one of our past episodes. And we talked about it in the 4 ways that you can win the game here in Star Trek New Worlds. The first is a knockout or a TKO, as in like a total death kill of your enemy, like totally wipe them out. The second is a disqualification. So for whatever reason, behavior or something goes along when the player is sort of breaking the rules, and probably pretty rare when it comes to these kinds of games, and therefore the player can sort of be disqualified. The third is sort of the choice to retire, or rather be put in a situation where they can't continue, i.e. I use the metaphor of mixed martial arts. So for example, in mixed martial arts, if a combatant gets cut too severely, the doctor will end the match. And we've seen in the UFC, for example, there have been a lot of shin breaks recently, sort of in the past number of years. And so if you break a bone in the middle of a fight, you can't continue because they want to, make sure they're not really hurting you as a contender. So essentially what happened here, and of course the fourth way that you can win is points. The idea that we have some kind of ranking system here, and that you would win by points in the sense of whatever the metric that we would use, you've accomplished more on that metric, i.e. control more resources, bigger economy, bigger military, whatever the metric is, you have met that mark, and from a point perspective, you dominate the game. So in the context of the Lyrans and the Federation, two things happened. The Banshees, so the Lyrans were being very successful in their campaign against the Remans, but it put them sort of in an extended position. They were a little bit overextended, shall we say, when it came to their attack. Not too dissimilar from when the Klingons attacked the Carnarvon. Unfortunately for the Lyrans, they had the Banshees show up, and because they ignored the Banshees for a particular length of time, they sort of grew because they were able to decimate and destroy a YBS, and when there's certain units that they destroy, i.e. bases, they're able to multiply, self-replicating robots. The Lyran player, in the face of looking at the Banshees and sort of his positioning, decided that he could no longer continue because the hurdle that was in front of him was too much for him to overcome, i.e. I can't win the game, or I can't succeed because of what's in front of me, and the Lyran player decided to retire. Now, as a domino effect, because of that, the Federation player, whose ally was the Lyrans, saw that two things happened. One, the Banshees had actually engaged one of his fleets and wiped it out completely. I think it was 12 ships gone. And the Federation saw their ally, the Lyrans, just pop out of the game. They felt, the Federation that is, that they could no longer continue at that point because their closest ally, i.e. the Lyrans, was no longer there to be able to support them, and they could no longer continue. Now, whether we as other players don't necessarily agree with that analysis, those two players felt that they could no longer continue in the game and therefore retired, shall we say. And so this is not new in these kinds of games. You will have players who, on the sort of the negative extreme, will rage quit. On the positive extreme, just don't feel that they can continue and don't feel that it's fun anymore. And so, whichever way you want to perceive what happened, let's give them the benefit of the doubt, and they just didn't want to play that game. No problem. So they were in a position where they felt they couldn't continue, and they retired from the game. As a result, our balkanization rule kicked in, and what's happened has happened in the northwest of the map. So it creates opportunity for the players remaining, and because this is sort of like how the game is played, there's only so many players that have the durability, fortitude, perseverance, stubbornness, you might say, to be able to continue in the face of obstacles and succeed at the end of the game. And there is so much more of this game yet to play because these games take forever. And like I say, I really only think we're in the middle of the game, maybe. There's so much more that can potentially happen in various different directions. Where are various players going to find success and or experience failure? That is still so much up for grabs. So with the 7 players that are remaining, there is still lots of dynamic play that can occur. And of course, the opportunities that the Federation and Lyran retirement has caused is going to create a lot of interesting dynamics as the land grab or the rush into those spaces to sort of control those areas is going to provide a lot of opportunity for interesting role play and gameplay. So hopefully that answers your question. And we'll slide on through. Right. So Dell says, the might of the Reman Empire scared them to death. That's fair. I mean, I'd be scared of space vampires too. No foundation, veins throughout the face, those pointy ears, no hairline. I mean, to be fair, no hairline here, but you know what I'm saying. Big slow target, fear of monsters. The Federation player lost a fleet against Banshees, and they felt they could not succeed against them. Loss of one ally led to loss of the second. Fair. Excuse me. John Tenbrook says, Dan, I suppose that's possible, but still, this is a war game. Fight it out. And that is what many of us felt as well. But again, we're not here to force you to play a game you don't want to play. It's all about having fun. This is a community of players who enjoy getting together and having fun together. And if you're not having fun playing this game, no harm, no foul. You go ahead and retire. But we have mechanics now in place to be able to protect the fun of the other players that are still playing the game. And that's really the focus of us as a group, to make sure that we are all having fun and that no one player or small collection of players really ruins the fun for anybody else. After all, we're here for a good time. And it would seem a long time. All right. Oops, sorry, Del. Autocorrect changes your name to Dan. LOL. All right. It's okay. Dan is my incognito name. True. All right. John Tenbrook, big thumbs up. All right. Big slow target. Hi, Bill. John Tenbrook, sounds like they were inexperienced players who didn't really know what was possible and manageable in the game. Ironically, the Federation player is a very experienced Federation Empire player, but obviously has never played or hasn't had the opportunity to play a lot in this context. So the question is, I mean, yeah, it's just if you've played a game a certain way and we're playing it slightly differently, because we play this game using the rule set of Federation Empire as published by the Amarillo Design Bureau. However, Federation Empire is a standalone game, tabletop scenario, where you have static forces that start the game. It's very much an analog for World War II. Federation versus the Romulans versus the Klingons, Lyrans, Kzinti, all those factions. But you start off with a fleet and you kind of make your way through the Great War or the General War. This game is a different game. It is a 4X game, exploration from the very beginning, where you are exploring, expanding, exterminating your enemies, and exploiting the resources that you find. And the mechanics and the dynamics of that are different than in a static game. So, yeah, I mean, if you haven't had a lot of experience and or you've only had experience in the standalone Federation Empire game, then maybe this isn't the challenges that this kind of a game presents are a little bit outside of your experience, and maybe you're not as comfortable with them. I can only sort of, think about as a thought experiment what they might be thinking, because, we haven't really had that discussion. But let's move on and think about positive things. All right. I don't think so, but the danger level from monsters was hotly debated and is still being debated. Fair. All right. I don't think so, but the danger... Oh, yeah, here we go. Juggy's not building 2x2 bases pattern wider apart. Yes, the fact that the Juggernauts aren't building the classic 2x2 is interesting. George is in the house. George Forknell says, instead of the Fed Lyran empires breaking up, could a player in waiting for another campaign have stepped in to lead those empires and play out this campaign? That was an interesting thought that we discussed. And we chose against that because of two reasons. One, in any particular campaign that we're playing, this is going to be a normal consequence of the game. You're going to have players that essentially don't feel that they can overcome the obstacles in front of them and want to retire. And if we wanted to continue the game sort of in perpetuity, then maybe that would be something we want to do. But at the end of the day, there is an arc to this game, and at some point it will end. And so in order to prevent the game from being continually being played in perpetuity in one particular campaign, we have to allow players to be able to be taken out. And so this is just, as I say, like in the 4 different ways you can win the game, this is just one way that a player can depart the game. And so we saw 3 players leave in this past turn. One, the Hydrants, who officially sort of retired from the game. They surrendered. The Lyrans and the Feds broke up. And so we'll just kind of go forward from that perspective. And I mean, if there is a particular alliance or collection of players that sort of get to a certain point in the game and they're like, yep, we're good, then maybe that's where the game ends and we start a new one from there. But as far as having other players who are sort of, like you say, in waiting, stepping in to take the game, I think that would be a little unfair to the current players that are playing the game. And because it would totally change the dynamic, and because Obviously, a new player will play it differently. So we'll just have to see. We'll have to see how that goes. And maybe that's a rule that we change in the future. But as for this game, in the effort to try and lead us towards some kind of conclusion, that was the approach that we took. All right. Dell, the Gorn have their top man on it. Double Agent Smitty is on the case. Yeah. All right, what do we got here? Let's round this out. Big Slow Target. That was suggested as an alternative, but the GM decided on balkanization. Yes, there were 4 or 5 of us talking about it, gave suggestions. Daniel chose a combo of balkanization and fog of war. Could the Fed Lyran empires have petitioned to join neighboring empires, scrapped all their ships, and turned over their territory to the gaining empire? Yeah, it's again, that would just sort of be an imbalance to the game. So this allows it to be a hurdle that you need to sort of conquer, take over, if that makes sense. So it's a challenge that you need to, as players, it's a challenge you need to rise to the occasion to and take. Because, I mean, it's a war game. Let's fight some wars. All right. So we ended up losing 3 players. Carney's gained some econ back. George, I cannot see you on my chat. Hello, George. George Duffy's in the house. Greetings, fellow entities. There was a discussion after the 3 people quit and balkanization fog of war was chose, but we talked about it. Hi, Bill. Thanks for the verbal explanation, Tony, as it cleared up a lot of my fog of war regarding the Fed Lyran resignation. Much appreciated. Pleasure. And thanks to everybody also for filling in the blanks here in the chat. Well, all right. So with all of that said, let's talk about alliances. Alliances have been something that's been big in the game. Not only is it something that was a determining factor in the Hydran War, the ISC and the Remans coming together to be able to take on the Hydran menace. And then, of course, the Hydrans allying with the Carnivon to be able to fight back. But as we sort of touch into that neighborhood and creating your own neighbors, what have we seen in recent times? We've seen, of course, the 4 powers who have come together. That is the Klingons, the Carnivon, the ISC, and the Reman. And they've come together to form the 4 Powers Alliance, and they basically populate the entire eastern side of the map, with the exception of that little Gorn pocket. The Gorn, on the other hand, so before that alliance was formed, and still in sort of place right now, was a non-aggression / mutual defense agreement between the Romulans, the Klingons, and the Gorn. Now, that mutual defense pact was a result of the Romulan War, because during the Romulan War, the Gorns came in and sort of put pressure on the Romulans in support of the Klingons. Because again, the Klingons were getting backdoored by the Carnies, and there was a little sympathy out there. So, in an effort to be able to prevent another conflict between Romulans, Gorn, and Klingons, an agreement was reached whereby if any one of those 3 powers were to engage in conflict with any of the other 2, the third party out, the odd man out, would join in the defense of the sort of aggrieved party. So, for example, if the Romulans attacked the Klingons, the Gorn would rise in defense of the Klingons, and they would ally with us, and we would fight, or we would cooperate in the sort of attacking the Romulans. Other way around, if the Gorn attacked the Roms, the Klingons and the Romulans would combine to defeat the Gorn. You can understand, based on the distribution of the map, the Romulans being in the middle and the Gorn and the Klingons being on either side, this provided an interesting dynamic, because if the Klingons attack the Roms, how are the Gorn going to get over to attack the Klingons? And vice versa. If the Gorn attack the Roms, how do the Klingons get over? It's a little bit of a convoluted thing, but... Excuse me. A little bit of a convoluted thing, but it's that's what we had, and that's what's still in place now. Now, in spite of that agreement and sort of the increasing cooperation between the Romulans and the Gorn have recently gone into an alliance with the Tholians. Very interesting. So whereas the Tholians were previously working with the Feds and arguably the Lyrans, now, with the collapse of those 2 empires, the Tholians have reached out to the Gorn and they've combined forces. Very interesting, especially since both of those factions are very weak at the moment when it comes to their military units and the overall strength of their fleets. But the late game will see them both rise to the occasion and will, I don't want to say dwarf, but they will definitely have a distinct advantage in the GW era. So it'll be interesting to see how this evolves going forward and what happens when. I I've had suspicions about the Tholian progression and what they're doing, and I have a feeling that at some point they're over indexed in their investment in GW tech, and I suspect they're already at M tech. They just haven't deployed any M ships. It'll be interesting to see if the Juggernaut experience forces them to push out some M ships, but again, we're just going to have to see what happens. Now, because the Gorn are allied with the Tholians, this goes back to our neighborhood discussion, they've essentially removed the threat of attack from the north or on their northern border. So, by example, if we slide over to the map, you will see that this border, which has been sort of a point of potential conflict between the Tholians and the Gorn, is now effectively not too much of a concern because they're allied. Now, we know that there's the Four Powers Alliance, and of course now the two factions, the Tholians and the Gorn, in alliance here. But who's the odd man out? Well, that is the Romulans. And as I slide over here, the Romulans are essentially the odd man out. They don't have a particular alliance. They're independent. Not quite Switzerland, but certainly more akin to that than NATO or the Warsaw Pact. So, which of course is the metaphor for Federation and Empire. So very interesting to see here. So we've got, again, when we think about the Romulans, they have an economy that is middle of the pack. They are close to 50, not quite at 50. They are surrounded by factions that are substantially more economically developed than they are, i.e. the Gorn are at 56 EP, the Klingons are in the high 60s, the Tholians are in the 60s, and the Romulans, again, are just knocking on the door of 50. When it comes to total number of ships, the Gorn and the Romulans are very similar in their total number of ships, and the total attack potential that the Romulans have is low. What advantages do the Romulans have? Well, the Romulans do have M-Tech, we know that, and they are continuing to expand and explore to the north. So it'll be interesting to see how this all develops. One thing that's of particular note, and we'll have to see how this develops, because the Romulans and the Klingons have a treaty agreement with regards to the border. But as you can see, the Romulans are now pushing past that border mark. So the question is, for the future relationship between the Klingons and the Romulans, what are they going to do about negotiating this border? What is the motivation and intent of either faction about what it is that they're doing? We'll have to see. I know that as the Klingons, we have very clearly communicated our intent to go towards the center of the map. And the Charlie 28, which is right here, is the perceived center. And you can see that both of the Romulans and the Klingons are probably, between them and the Tholians, are the closest ones to that. I mean, if this is our reference point here, 1, 2, 3, 4 hexes away, or 5 hexes away, is the Romulans, or sorry, the Tholians. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 5 and 6 hexes away for the Romulans, and the Klingons are all the way down here. They're quite a ways away by comparison. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 9 versus 6 versus 5, and everyone's kind of pushing towards the center. The question is, what kind of resistance is going to be encountered on the way in towards the center? We've heard and talked about the Juggernauts as being a huge faction to fight, and what's going to happen there. Well, we'll have to see what this all looks like as we get closer and closer to the center. But again, in that context, we've got an alliance in the west, which is the Tholians and the Gorn. The alliance in the east, which is the Four Powers, and then the odd man out, which is the Romulans. So what kind of role are the Romulans going to play? We will have to wait and see, and I'll be very interested to see what happens with the Romulans as they go forward. Yeah. On a totally different note, and separate, before we sort of roll into the Klingons and round out our turn 79 discussion, let me roll into a little piece of role play that I will share with you that happened here in when it came to. So let me try that again. So as part of our Discord channel, we have a story narrative channel that allows us to be able to do a lot of the role playing that happens in game. We also send emails back and forth to be able to share diplomatic discussions and various other things. So, as opposed to being a straight war game, which is obviously what this is, we include or we inject a degree of role play and character development when it comes to how we play our factions. Some more so than others. I mean, everyone's role playing skills are a little bit different, but it allows to add a little bit of color, perhaps, to what it is that we're doing. In that note, or on that note, the Klingons, as you may remember, recently sent out or had a role play thing that I put out there. And as you may remember, the Klingon faction is in the spirit or inspired by the Alpha Legion of Warhammer 40K. Alpha Legion is of particular note because of two things. One, they have a persona, an image, a role to play in the world of Warhammer 40K that is very duplicitous and sort of espionage-esque. They are very much around, although they are quite competent at direct combat and war and battlefield tactics, their strengths lie in their ability to deceive, diplomatically distract, and come up with alternative ways to be able to achieve their aims. They're known as the sneaky ones, the spies, the deceivers, and you can never trust what an Alpha Legion member is saying. As far as their makeup, they have not one but two Primarchs. The Primarchs being the heroic generals that lead each one of these 20 legions, or 18. So the 20th Legion, which is the Alpha Legion, has not one but two Primarchs, twins. Same one soul, two bodies is the argument. There's Alpharius and Omicron. Omegon, excuse me. And so in this game, we've replicated that in some way, shape, or form. The history of the Klingon Empire is that we faced a calamity, that there was we had basically a revolution of artificial intelligence, and that one artificial intelligence survived the Holocaust of sorts, the apocalypse, and was benevolent and looked to recover and grow the Klingon people back to being a galactic power. That artificial intelligence genetically engineered not one, not two, but three of these superhero-esque generals or Primarchs. And as opposed to the Alpha Legions 2, we've got three, because the Hydra, which is the sort of the symbol of the Alpha Legion, mainly because when you cut off the head of a Hydra, two more pop up in its place, and so you can never really get ahead in that regard. But with a three-headed Hydra, I decided to use three Primarchs, not two. We have Alpha, or the Alpha, and the Alpha is the persona that is presented to all the other players when engaged in discussion and diplomacy. It is one persona that is played out by three different characters, but there is nonetheless the Alpha, who is that individual. There's the second one, which is Omicron. Now, you might have seen that video about a year ago when the Omicron variant of the thing that shall not be named came out. That was the name that we used as a play on Omegon to be able to name out this second of the three Primarchs. And the third is, we refer to him as the Gamma. And if you followed any of the role-playing that I've shared so far, whereas the first, the Alpha, is a very blunt sort of instrument. He believes, or his philosophy is all-out effort, maximum effort, to be able to accomplish your goals. Omicron is a more diplomatic, uses a more diplomatic approach and uses alternative methods of manipulation and coercion to be able to accomplish their goals, very much in the spirit of the Alpha Legion. The Gamma is totally different. The Gamma is, for lack of a better way to describe it, mentally unstable. He has traits of the Alpha, meaning that he does and effectively delivers sort of all-out military attacks. His second characteristic is that he's fully transparent. He will always, almost always, tell you exactly what he's doing. Although he may not, and this is the aspect of Omicron that sort of figures in, he may not always tell you why it is he's doing it. He will be fully transparent, and because of the openness of the Alpha that he displays, you may not think to question the why they are doing, or why the Gamma is doing what he's doing. But the why is the deceitful part that is sort of taken from Omicron, and why he's doing that. So he has elements of both of these two other Primarchs, and then a third quality that is a little different. When we look at Warhammer 40K, there is the two sides of the galactic war of the Horus Heresy. There is the true faithful servants of the Emperor. They are the ones that stay loyal to the Emperor of Mankind in that universe. And then there's the ones that fell to the gods of chaos, which is just a pantheon of gods that exists in the Warhammer 40K universe. In this context, very much in the spirit of the influence of something external, like a deity or some kind of external negative influence. We've got this particular, the Gamma is quite spiritual and seems to be focused around a war-like philosophy, sort of like the samurai. But if you think of the Warhammer 40K pantheon, there is Khorne, the god of war. And while a lot of depictions about Khorne, the god of war, is that he's like bloodthirsty and sort of like ultimate barbarians and stuff, he is also the god of order. And so in the context of this character, the Gamma is seeking very much sort of in the classic Klingon way, the spoils of war, the honor of victory, and the thrill of the battle. So he's very much looking for those things. He carries trophies of his wars and his conquests, and he looks to satisfy a near spiritual level of need that comes from his desire need to engage in conflict. So whereas the Alpha and Omicron are very rational beings, very sort of like philosopher monks in that context, the Gamma is a little bit off center in that respect, and he's much more spiritual, less philosophical. Granted, he does follow an ethos around martial purity, if you want to call it that, and order and structure. But he seeks the stimulation of not only the experience of war, but the external sort of satisfaction he gets from his spiritual experience. And so there's a lot to potentially play out there, but that gives you a little bit of a paint of the background of these three characters. So hopefully that's useful. So with that said, let's roll into the role play that I shared earlier this week. All right. I hope he is satiated. I don't believe that is likely, brother. 2 armored figures stood on 2 of the engraved Hydra heads on the marble floor, the third vacant. Your timely negotiations certainly prevented a protracted conflict with the Carnivon. Such a lengthy war effort would have increased the risk of future conflict with our neighbors. Yes, I agree. Our Four Powers Alliance is a pillar to that strategy and keeping our relative positions secure. I've noted the recent missives from the Romulans. They have valid concerns concerning the recent activities of Gamma. Yes, his prosecution of the Carnivon conflict was well planned and executed, but speaks to his greater need for conflict. Even now, he eagerly awaits the launch of his new command platform, from which I am sure we can expect the coordination of a new campaign. The 2 figures averted their gazes to the holographic display of the galactic map. I believe we can distract and satiate his need for conflict if we focus his energies towards the now defunct governments in the galactic northwest. Yes. Leaning slightly towards the display, this is certainly an unexpected series of events. 2 governments failing in near unison is suspicious. It will create a great imbalance, and we can expect various powers to attempt to take advantage of this situation. Indeed, deploying our brother into such an environment will be disruptive. The benefit will see our brother occupied with other regional conflicts, and we should expect to see success based on his track record. We will have to wait to see what actions the other powers take. The Juggernaut incursion into Tholian space will be an opportunity to assess their industrial capacity and military competency. The results should prove insightful. We are agreed then. I shall encourage our brother towards the disharmony of the Northwest. We can empower him with a mission of order and stability. Meanwhile, Father has encouraged the pursuit of our primary mission. I will return to my task force and resume those activities. The hollow map dissolves, leaving the room in near darkness. The fading glow of the green helmet lenses is the only signal of the figure's departure. So with that said, what did you think about that? That was a little nugget. I know I'm not the best author in the world, but what did you think about that little piece of roleplay? As I was mentioning, the Gamma is a little bit war thirsty, shall we say? And he is sort of eagerly planning his next assault. And whenever I engage as a player in the different campaigns, I have a particular persona that is organizing, coordinating, and directing those activities. As you heard here, it was the Gamma who was coordinating the assault against the Carnivon. And if you go back and you sort of listen to some of our live streams from several turns ago, you will see the very clear transparency and yet deceitful duplicitousness of the communications around that assault. So very interesting to see how that goes. And then, of course, we'll see how sort of the next series of turns goes forward. So anyways, you let me know what you think. But with that said, let's slide back into the map real quick and get into the Klingon turn. Oh yeah! Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Klingon border. As you can see here, as we look down the coast, we have a continuing back and forth of economic convoys, or rather commercial convoys, going back and forth. And most recently, we just finished delivering one to the Romulans and receiving one from the Romulans, and then this turn we'll probably send another one. As you can see, as we go back down here, there's a series of stacked ships around. That's because there was a dragon over in the corner here, and it's now gone. I had left orders to be able to engage. Whoa, ladies and gentlemen, another fire of a disruptor. I am drained of coffee, but I shall take a swig of the agua in celebration. Thank you very much. Oh my goodness. George Forknell has fired a coffee our way. Thank you very much, George. Our goal today is 3 total coffees. We are 2/3 of the way there. You can see the progress bar on the bottom is making its way that way. Can we finish off with a 3rd? Let's see if we can get there before we get to the top of the clock. All right, so let's talk about this stack of ships. You can see that we built some ships. We were ready to engage and encounter the dragon, which was the counter that was over here, but it has since disappeared. We never actually engaged the target, so I don't know what's going on. We were trying to explore this particular hex here. If I take away these ships, you will see that this is now no longer a fog of war hex. It was previously. And so now we're sort of free and clear to be able to send ships through if we want to, and build bases to be able to provide supply through that side. Whoops, let's bring the bases back. Provide supply through that wormhole and get to the other side. But as you heard in the narrative story, there is some work going on in the background, and we'll have to see what that work results in. A new command platform of sorts. What could that be when it comes from the Klingon side? You will see, hopefully, shortly. We'll have to reveal that perhaps in turn 80. The new Klingon command platform will be released. We'll see what that looks like. All right, so as you can see, we've got a collection of ships here. We've got a bunch of F4s, a D6M, so 4 F4s, a D6M, and then, of course, Home Fleet just stacked on the capital. We've also got a collection of ships here. We've got Joint Task Force Alpha. I'll show you that in a minute. Along with a collection of 5 E4Ms and a D6M, just kind of floating there, and of course a prime team ready to do the rest of the discovery. If we look at a Klingon at JTFA, we'll see that in that task group we have 6 F4s, a D4, a M-Era tug, a TGB, which is like a battle tug, and then an R&D team with the D4C command ship ready to conduct more research and development on wormhole tech. But do I need it? I don't know. We'll have to see. Maybe there's something else going on with that R&D team. Yes, so we've got a number of other F4s. You can see there's 4 of them here, and then another one's just chilling out here in the area, ready to go in their various directions. We'll have to see what happens over the next little while. I don't know. We'll have to see whether we wait to go through that wormhole for the delivery of the new command platform. We'll have to see what happens. But either way, as you can see, there's a lot of concentration of ships in that southerly area. As we scroll up the map, we can see that we've got a collection of fleets, both on the YDK that is sort of on the border here. We got a planet here with Joint Task Force Gamma. Just as a quick highlight of what that is, it's merely a tug. T4 is a Y-era tug, and it's sitting there. We have a convoy here, an M-era convoy, and another tug. You can see that there's going to be some base building that's going to start happening there very shortly. Meanwhile, up the side of the map, we can see we've got our resources lock, stock, and smoke and barreled, and we've got a base station that is now complete and most likely will be upgraded very shortly, because after all, if we're going to be pushing into the center, we're going to need some repair capacity just in case. I mean, not just in case, we know it's coming. If we do the quick planning here, we can see that if Charlie 28 is the center and we know there's a base in India 25, we can reasonably expect that India 31 will be a BATS. And so what are we going to do when we engage that BATS? We'll have to see, but likely there is a BATS there, and we'll have to engage it. So when we do engage it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hexes away, we'll have to make sure that we have bases in close range to be able to provide the supply and support to be able to move that forward. So we'll see what that looks like. It'll be interesting. And of course, we have a collection of fleets in this area. Just to give you a sense of what those fleets look like, we'll pull up a green fleet here. There's a green fleet. So green fleet is a combination of 4, not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 D6Ms. Quite a stack. And then, of course, a total of 14 E4Ms. That's quite the battle group. And then, of course, JTFB, or Beta, call it Bravo. It's just a command ship, a D4C with a couple of F4s, really just providing some sort of escort for a lot of the exploration stuff that's happening. And then, of course, we got North Fleet. Let's just, for S&Gs, I'll just show you what's in North Fleet. Nothing too exciting. Again, exploration ship, escort, cruiser, and a prime team. So all of that just kind of in that area doing the exploration, trying to push towards the center as we go. Let's talk about the Carnarvon real quick. As you can see, they have the biggest challenge of being able to downsize their fleet. You can see the majority of their fleet is stacked on their capital. The question will be, how many ships can they decommission at any one time? There's a salvage rule as far as like you can decommission, I think it's 2 ships at a time. But we'll have to get clarification from our GM Daniel on exactly how many ships you can decommission at any one time. After all, if you were to decommission like 100, not that you would, but if you did, and let's say the average salvage cost for those ships is, I don't know, let's say it's 4. So all of a sudden, if you decommissioned 4 ships and you had 4 EP per ship, all of a sudden you get 400 EP. That doesn't make any sense. So there's a limit to the amount of ships you can decommission at any one time, of obviously the amount that you can recover, and as far as salvage from that ship. And if you think about it, there's only so much industrial capacity you have to build and, of course, deconstruct or strip down when it comes to this kind of stuff. So something to think about. Of course, they can also throw them into patrol pool as a way to get them out of circulation, and they can scuttle them, just destroying them, but you don't get any salvage really from that. So some things to think about. Oh, and of course, mothballing. What do they have here? They've got a couple ships, a little bit of exploration happening in the bottom corner here. White Dragon is continuing to exist in the corner. Maybe that's a way to use your ships and engage in a limited war campaign to get that planet under your thumb. And what else we got here? We basically just got the collection of ships, and that's the biggest thing. We did the math most recently, and let's kind of walk through it ever so quickly right now. When we look at fleet cap, and we'll pull up EP as well. So we look at fleet cap. We know the Carnarvons are at 113. If we assume that they're at YTech, the multiple for YTech is, I believe it's 6. Let me just confirm with my own turn sheet as I pull it up here off the side. I know you want to see it, but no, not today. So I'll pull up that. What? Oh, okay. What's going on here? There we go. All right, so as I scroll down here, I'm just going to check the... yeah, so the multiple is 6. 5 for W, 6 for Y, 7 for M, and 8 for GW. So what that means is you take their EP and you times it by 6, and that gives you their total fleet cap potential. So we have a 35, what is it? 35 and a half. Let's go here. So 35 and a half, 35.5 times 6 gives us a total fleet cap of 213. If we look at the number here, we can see that their total fleet cap is 485. So minus 485, I don't know what it'll give us a negative number. That's 272. Now we know that the overage cost when you're at peace is 0.05, so we times that by 0.05, and that gives us 13.6. That is the cost that they have to pay for to pay for just the ships that they have. 13.6. Now they have 35.5. Let's assume they're at peace with no penalties. So you just divide that by 2. That's 17.5 minus the 13.6, meaning they only have 4.15 EPs to play with. That's all the Carnarvon have to spend. So that is such an economic crippling scenario. They really, I mean, if I'm the Carnarvon player, I really want to do everything I can to cut down my fleet cap so that I can start recovering my economy. Make sense? Something to think about. So that's their biggest hurdle right now, is trying to cut down their fleet size so that they can economically recover. Because I expect they were probably in a deficit at the time of going to peace, and therefore they're struggling to get out of that deficit. If you start your turn with a negative balance prior to like even when you get your gross income, then you can't spend money on anything. No R&D, no building, no construction, nothing. You can only sort of move to the next turn until you're in the black. So, yeah. Once you're in the black, then you can go back into deficit spending. But if you start your turn in the deficit, like in the red, you're in trouble. Let's scroll up here. We can see that the interesting dynamic that's going on up here. Of course, there is a slight redistribution of assets. You can see the Remans are focusing on the left or more towards the center of the map, the ISC on the right. And I expect that we'll probably see a more substantial border established between the ISC and the Remans in the coming turns as they sort of like work out where each faction is going to be. Obviously, there's a mix and a match here a little bit, and you can see like the bases existing on both sides, which is fine. That's fine because they're allies. We're all allies, so we can sort of cross-pollinate that way. That's no problem and no big deal. As we scroll up here, you can see that there is a relative collection of ships, nothing too crazy. A good stack of ships. I mean, nothing too crazy, but a couple of DDs and a YCL on the homeworld, just to make sure nothing sort of like pops in to visit. And the bulk of that fleet, the bulk of the fleets that were being used to defend or attack the Hydrons are still sort of down south in this area. But I imagine also that because we know that they were in economic exhaustion, the ISC are also suffering this challenge. So if you're a numbers-minded individual, take a look at the EP at the start of this live stream and the fleet caps for all the different factions and work out what their current overages may or may not be. Keep in mind the following things. 1, if you're in Y-Tech, it's a multiple of 6 of your income, gross income, and the number that you'll see on the EP table. And if you're in M-Tech, it's times 7. So if you're in Y-Tech, it's 6 times whatever the number is. And I believe it was, 44.5 or something like that for the ISC. So yeah, 44.5 for the ISC, which means their total fleet cap would be, quick math here. I know we really love the math. So their total fleet cap would be 267, and then you can do the rest of the calculation from there. Keep in mind that also they are probably in the 75% war fatigue. So you would take their number, you would times it by 0.75, and then you would divide it by 2 in order to get the peacetime income that they would have. then subtract anything that they would have from a fleet overage cost perspective, and then you get a sense of how much money they do or don't have. I expect the ISC are also hurting hard, just like the Carnivon. The Remans, on the other hand, Honey Badger don't give no, because they are just plowing ahead. They've got all those ships and fleets, and they're going to do something with it. I imagine they're going to roll into the Lyran area of space and just conquer all that crap. Because, I mean, why not? When you've got that many ships and you've got the income to support it, away you go. Keeping in mind, the Remans still have a 61.5 EP. They are not suffering war fatigue. And 61.5, so divided by 2 gives them a 30.75 peacetime economy. Pretty decent. Now, of course, their peacetime fleet cap is going to be interesting. Let's see here. So Riemann, 61.5 times 6. They have a 369 fleet cap, and their fleet cap is... It'll take a second. Riemann fleet cap is 576. Ooh. So, I mean, yeah, it's going to be interesting. I'll let you guys finish out the math calculations if you want to do that, and see what that all looks like. So we can see the ISC, and of course the Remans are struggling with that post-peace budgetary constraints, as well as the Carnivon. And then, of course, that takes us to the top of the map at 12 o'clock, where we have the Lyrans as well. All right, so we're back on the attack right here live with you here now on the main screen. So the question is, for all of you, what do you think about that? What do you think about all that exciting business that's going on here around the map? The economic struggles that are happening with the Carnivon, the IC, and the Riemann. The alliance on the west side of the map between the the Atholians and the Gorn. And, of course, the odd man out, which is the Romulans. What is up with that? Let's take a look at the chat and see what's going on. Bill, yes, it can be fun. If you can see the Discord channel, there are some fun and lively RP stories. If you are so interested in joining our Discord channel, then please use that QR code right there and or the link down below, and you can go over to Coffee and join us in our Discord channel with the Coffee and Discord link or tier when it comes to our support. The automatic coffee bot will send you an invitation to join us on our Discord channel, and you can pop on in with a designation that you are a supporter on Coffee. What are the perks of that? Well, of course, you get to support us on Coffee, which is greatly appreciated with the caffeine injection that is always so appreciated, but also you get to be able to get access to the RP, the witty banter, and the camaraderie that happens here on our Discord channel. Also, as a perk, when you are a Coffee supporter, and of course part of our Discord, you'll be in the inside loop when it comes to the next campaign that's coming up, and have first chance to be able to join that campaign, and of course pick your faction when that campaign launches. Of course, our last campaign was full within under 48 hours. Ba-boom! Ladies and gentlemen, a coffee has been fired. Speaking of coffee, thank you so much. We'll see who that is in just a moment as it populates on the chat. But thank you for the coffee. Let's take a sip of water in the process. Coffee fired by the Remans. Remans? Oh, yeah. Dell has fired us a coffee. Thank you, Dell, for your caffeine support. We have reached our goal for today. 3 coffees in our time. Woo-hoo. That's right, baby. 1 coffee every half hour keeps us rolling here on Star Trek New Worlds. And if you want to be like Dell, firing the coffees our way, then please head over to the coffee link just there. Head over there. Join us on the Discord channel. You can be part of this community as far as playing this game in the future and have fun like us here. So if that's something that you want to do that you'd be interested in, then please head over and check that out. Let me finish off with the chat here and see what is going on. Okay, John Tenbrook says, it adds flavor to what would otherwise be a straightforward war game. I like your writing, Tony. The Galactic News is also something I look forward to as well. Oh, well, thank you very much. Daniel is the author of the Galactic News, so I'm sure he'll appreciate that. It's always exciting to see what he comes up with every week, because as GM, he has a little insight in the back of the sort of the behind the scenes a la Wizard of Oz to be able to see what's going on. So his insights on the stories is awesome. Eugene says, Klingon map no longer fits on one screen. So true. Fits on two screens. Maybe both legendary E1 captains can become governors of sizable sectors to challenge their management skills. Not a bad idea. Joining Discord is well worth it, John. Lots of past posts remain there to provide plenty of entertainment. Dell, decommission. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, over and above, we have fired another coffee. Bam, John has fired a coffee. Thank you, John. Woo! We are now 4 of 3. We are over our goal. Thank you so much. Very much appreciate that. I'm running out of liquids to consume. Woo! Thank you very much. There we go. Okay. Patrol pool does not remove from fleet cap, Paul says. Ooh, good thing to note. ISC Paul, my partner size in the crime. Partner in the crime. Yes. Whoa, look at all this crazy stuff that's happening here. Okay. Where are we here? Eugene. Are the Banshees in Riemann space in addition to the ones from before, or are they separate group? In addition, coincidence or signs of Banshee expansion? Possibly both. George says, what's more econ beneficial? Scrap excess ships for pennies and pay to support them until scrapping occurs, or mount an attack against juggies and lose ships in battle while gaining tech and territory? I am a big fan of the latter, but it's up to you, because, I mean, how long is it going to take you to get those ships to the front, and what is it you're going to do? One thing to note, when you attack the juggies, by example, you'll go to limited war, and limited war does not allow you to knock off war turns. Like, you can't recover war turns while you're at limited war, but you can, well, you do get 75% of your income versus 50% at peace. So it depends on what your goals are, long-term, short-term, and how you want to manage that. And, of course, the logistics of how close your ships are, by example. Riemann fired the coffee. Wow. Daniel says, it's interesting that 2 outbreaks of Banshees happened around the same time. Perhaps there's a little bit more fiddling behind the curtain than we otherwise thought. Banshee bot invasion. Daniel is slave to the dice rolls. Yes, but it feels so good. Fake news, Dell says. Tony, you may have missed a large section of the chat. Everyone is in Riemann's. I may have missed a large section of the chat. Oh, look at all this. Oh my goodness. There is a big section of the chat here. Okay, let's I'm going to pick it up where Eugene is talking about the India 25. What are the juggies using to man the India 25 base station? Has there ever been more than one juggy expeditionary force at one time? While powerful, they don't seem to be large in number. Good question, and I don't know the answer, but we're going to find out, because they have obviously like a ship or two there. But how the question is, their ships are powerful, but how many of them do they have? All of the factions in the game right now have more ships, like 100 or more, to be able to attack the juggies with. I believe that any one faction could potentially overpower the juggies. The question will be, how many juggies do the ships have? If the juggies have, for example, let's say 20 ships or more, and they combine that with very powerful fixed base stations like star bases and things like that, it will be very difficult to make significant progress against them without suffering dramatic losses. We'll have to see how that works. But if we are going to mount a coordinated attack or like a major attack on the juggies, it's going to be very interesting to see how that rolls out. But I'm looking forward to it. All right. So, Eugene, any military intelligence reports about the status of the juggy forces yet? No. Not, well, at least not from the Klingon side. The Clinks and Roms might consider straightening out their border to the north. Charlie 39. Straight north, with the understanding that the Roms take the first shot at attacking the center power juggies. Maybe. I'm very territorial, so we'll see how that works. Eugene, on another topic, did the legendary E1 captain that kept the Carnarvon forces on their side of the original frontier still a captain, or has he or she been granted a governorship of the newly freed areas of former Carnarvon space? We will have to see. I think that's a really good narrative plot that we can, or narrative thread that we can go down. We shall have to talk about it. Wow. As to comprehensive intelligence, Bill says, we know they are GW Tech. We know the ships have some kind of shield that can self-generate wormholes. Only they can use. Any ship higher than a CA can be expected. Yeah, and their CAs are maulers, which is a huge pain in the butt. Klingon fancy schmancy stuff. Riemann wants war. John says, I dig the role-playing as it establishes a persona for your empire, and it's fun to play out that concept while you game. I couldn't agree more. Woo! All right. Sorry that was to my clan in Conan Exiles. Ha, ha, ha. Okay. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you very much. We have hit double digits early on in this stream, so thank you so much. Thank you for joining us here live today. And if you are with us live, we'll be heading over to the Discord chat, so you can join us there in a post-live stream discussion to be able to talk about how you are going to take advantage of the three, not one, not two, but three rules or three ways to be able to take advantage of real estate here in Star Trek New Worlds. Do you think those strategies are good for you, or is there something else that we missed? Of course, stay up to date with all the live streams that are coming your way on this channel. And we will see you next week on Star Trek New Worlds. Bye for now.